Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the final program of this year, 2020. I am Margie Heldring. I am one of the two co-chairs of Grandmothers, and we are really pleased that you are here today. We also want to thank you in this year of so much disruption and so much turmoil and so much uncertainty. We want to thank you for staying with our shared agenda to prevent gun violence. There's an enormous amount of need all around us, and it has been heartening and encouraging and making a difference to know that everyone is staying together and continuing to work on this problem. And speaking of together, I want to give a special welcome today to our kindred spirits, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence on Cape Cod. We have several of those grandmothers with us. Each of us came to life right after the tragic shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, now almost 8 years ago. And we have been in increasingly close communication. We have Donna Wald, who is the current president of Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, Cape Cod, and Jennifer, I want to get your name right, Muroff, who is the legislative director for the Massachusetts Coalition Against Gun Violence and the Massachusetts League of Women Voters. And Donna lets me know that we will be invited to their legislative meeting in a few weeks. So this is excellent sharing. So a few housekeeping rules or guidelines rules that I've been asked to describe. One is everyone is of course on mute and will stay that way. There will be a Q&A. You can see the box at the bottom of your screen, Q&A. Please feel free to post any questions there and we will do our very best to answer them all. This session is being recorded and will be sent out to you after it is complete in a day or so. So don't worry about taking notes or if you miss something important. I want to say that, as we all know, this year has been incredibly strenuous, but I think we can look forward to a new year in 2021. And it may well be a year to bring more people into the movement and strengthen our connections around the country. So you are a key part of all that. And many of you have been here for all 8 years, and thank you. Finally, I want to acknowledge and commend the hard, wonderful work of Grandmothers Program Committee all year long. And today, the coordinator of today's program, Maggie Carr. Thank you for your work. So now I know it is my great pleasure to welcome Kay Bicey to speak. Kay is the president of the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence Foundation, one of the two elements that work very supportively and together make up Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. Kay, welcome to you.
Thank you, Margie. Good morning, everyone. I just want to offer my greetings to you this morning and on behalf of the Foundation of Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. The foundation is that part of Grandmothers that raises funds to support research in gun violence prevention and education about that research. The foundation has had a very busy and productive year. We've seen the completion of the research project that was funded in 2020. And we are anxiously awaiting publication of that study and will be sharing results broadly with you in the coming year. We are also, thankfully, very well positioned to award additional research grants early in 2021. We're right in the middle of a process of making those decisions about what types of projects and issues related to gun violence and its prevention warrant our support. So stay tuned. We will be making announcements very soon in the new year. Just a personal note. I have been a member of Grandmothers Against Gun Violence since I retired in 2015. And I can tell you that of the various organizations that I belong to, I am most proud of my affiliation with Grandmothers. And what makes me proud is not only our mission, but also the wonderful dedication of some very smart, capable, and passionate women. So with that, I would like to introduce the co-chair of the Grandmothers Membership Committee, Donna Stringer.
Good morning. I'm so glad you can join us today. If you are a member of Grandmothers and have an email address, you recently received our invitation to renew your membership. Our membership year goes from January 1st to December 31st each year, and we are hoping you'll take the time to renew your membership now so that we don't have to contact you again and again. If you're not a current member, we would encourage you to join right after this meeting. Grandmothers is a membership organization, and we depend on our members to support the important work like you will hear about today. Our membership fees cover approximately 1/3 of our annual budget. And it's an important 1/3 because it brings with it your involvement and your name and your energy. The rest of our budget comes from gifts, some from members like you, and others from friends of members or community organizations. Another thing you can consider doing today is to buy membership for people as a gift during this holiday season. You know, those people that have everything and would enjoy knowing that their membership is going to help make the world a safer place for our grandchildren, all of our grandchildren and theirs. You can join, you can renew, or you can gift, all by going to our website, grandmothersagainstgunviolence.org. Thank you for being here again today. I hope you enjoy the program. Now I'm going to turn the stage over to Patty Otley, co-chair of our Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you from the Legislative Committee for joining us today in a program that begins our annual preparation for being engaged in the Washington legislative session, which begins on January 11th, a few weeks away. In a few moments, we'll hear from 4 people who are perfectly positioned to offer insights to us about what to expect and how we can prepare. 2 of them are very seasoned gun sense legislators. The third is a recently elected representative, and the other is our very experienced lobbyist. But before I introduce that, I would like to mention 2 things very quickly. One is our recent and first ever support of gun sense candidates for elective office. In the recent November election, we supported 93 candidates for the Washington State Legislature, including 2 who are on our panel today. And we would certainly have endorsed the third panelist today if she had been on the ballot this year. In addition to being pleased about the number of candidates that we supported who will be serving in the legislature, we're very excited that the effort offered us the opportunity to introduce the GAGV name to all corners of our state and legislative districts where we hadn't had a presence before. The other thing I want to mention briefly is that we will have our annual lobby day this year. As you'll hear more about in a bit, the coming session will be mostly virtual, and so will our lobby day. It will be entirely virtual. I think we've all experienced that COVID has changed how we do things, but it's also offered us some wonderful opportunities, technological opportunities for expanding our reach. And in the case of lobby day, that means that we can get more of you involved who live in places of the state where it's difficult to travel to Olympia for a one-day lobbying effort. So look for our communications in early January, please, and consider joining us. We'd really love to have you join our efforts this year. Now on to our legislative program. Introducing it and offering an overview on this session is Becky Bogard, who will be representing us in Olympia for the 3rd year. After her comments, Becky will introduce our legislative guest. We have asked each of them to share a few minutes of insights with you into what they anticipate for the session, with particular emphasis upon our focus today, which is legislation that addresses the intersection of gun violence prevention and racial justice. As Margie mentioned a minute ago, we will have a question and answer period. We invite you to participate. by, as she said, clicking on the Q&A spot at the bottom. Usually it's at the bottom of your screen, and typing out your question. We will get to as many of them as we can. Ideally, we'll get to all of them, but if we don't, we apologize. And if you'd still like to ask that question, please do send us an email at gagvorganization@gmail.com. The co-chair of the Legislative Committee, Jennifer Dolan Waldman, will be helping Becky present your questions to the legislative guests today. So let's get on with our program, and please welcome Becky Bogard.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate the introduction. But first of all, I want to say that I can't do this alone. Obviously, I need all of you, but because this is going to be a really different session, I've brought on board another body, if you will, Devin Connor Green, to help me. And you guys, you will be hearing a lot from him over the next few months. Devin comes to the legislature, comes to me with some experience. He represents other clients as well. He is a lawyer. Don't hold that against him. And I do look, Devin, if you want to wave and so people see who you are, I really look forward to working with him, and I'm sure that you will find him very good in answering all of your questions. With that, I want to turn and introduce all the panelists at once after I make a few quick brief remarks about the session. And as we go through this, I would appreciate any of you commenting about how you think the session is going to go. As you've already heard, it's going to be a virtual session. I think that the House has to meet one day to change the rules, but after that, no one pretty much will be in Olympia. The Senate's going to be on a little different schedule because they have the ability to socially distance appropriately, much more so than the House. Just to give you an idea, the Speaker of the House told me that if you use the entire House floor, the wings, and the gallery, there still wasn't enough room to socially distance everybody. So that is the reason that they are looking at going to a virtual session. That means that committee meetings will be on Zoom, and I believe, and Senator Dinger can confirm this, that the Senate is going to be using Teams. So you need to figure out how to use both of them, which is a little project I've got to get myself into doing. There's been already some experimentation with committee hearings on Zoom. And I think for the most part, it's been pretty positive. You also might want to comment on that. In the House, one of the really interesting changes is that at least among House Democrats, there will be a limit of a 7-bill introduction. And for those of you not as familiar with the legislative process, you should know that this is the year, the first year of the biennium, where the number of bills usually exceeds a couple of thousand. And I don't think we'll see that this year. I think it will be significantly less, and I think it will make it more manageable. Furthermore, the Speaker of the House, Representative Lori Jenkins, has indicated that there are basically, I think it's 4 different topics. First of all, the budget. You have to have a budget by June 30th of next year. Secondly, there will be COVID-related legislation. Third, there will be police accountability legislation. And fourth, there will be climate. There's perhaps a little variance on some of that, but I think those are the 4 basic issues that she has laid out. It will make it a much more focused session. It probably means we're not going to have thousands and thousands of bills to deal with. And in many ways, I think it may be better. But the most important thing is using Zoom and Teams gives everybody in the state of Washington access to the legislature. TVW has done a great job, but this is going to be even better. There will be interesting hearings. I'm sure that Representative Goodman will comment on some he may have relating to police accountability and the number of people that show up. But it will be a very different session. And as Patty indicated, we will be talking to you later about having a virtual lobby day, which is going to be what most organizations, I think, will be doing because no one will be allowed in the Capitol. With that, I am going to introduce our panelists. First is Senator Manka Dhingra. Senator Dingra has been serving in the legislature since 2017. She is a lawyer. She's a King County prosecutor, and she specialized in domestic violence issues. In the legislature, she's been very interested in behavioral mental health issues and has chaired a subcommittee on behavioral mental health. Senator Dingra also was a sponsor of the Office of Firearms Safety. And if you don't comment on if you don't make a remark about it in your comments, you're getting a question. Representative Roger Goodman, he's the senior guy here, and he's been in the legislature since 2007. Both Senator Dingra and Representative Goodman are from the same district, the 45th, which is Kirkland, Redmond, and I don't know, a bit of Bellevue, who knows? It's that East Side district. Representative Goodman is also a lawyer. I go through educational credentials of all of our participants, but just suffice it to say they're quite outstanding. And Roger has been chair of the Public Safety Committee for several years now and will be the point on police accountability. Our third panelist is a representative-elect, and I'm not sure he's on here yet. I don't see him, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. David Hackney was elected in November, and he comes to us from South Seattle. Representative-elect Hackney is also a lawyer and has some great experience on this issue. And he, in fact, serves on the Alliance for Gun Responsibility Board and has for a while. So I'm hoping he will be here by the time we're supposed to get to him. But with that, Senator Dingra, I'm going to let you go first as coming from the senior chamber. Is that what you call it? Whatever. So go ahead and take about 5 minutes and chat with us about your interests and concerns.
Thank you so much, Becky, for that introduction. And thank you to grandmothers for the invitation to join you all today. I think I've met with you every year since I got elected. I really want to thank you for all your advocacy. Having you guys come to Olympia to testify really does make a big difference. And as Becky mentioned, our 2021 session is going to be mostly remote. And, you know, I truly do believe that it will provide greater access to those who have historically been unable to drive to Olympia to testify. So hopefully I will see you remotely during session. You know, the pandemic has been a terrible time for gun violence. There have been more than 88 homicides in King County this year, already more than the 78 from last year. And I know all these statistics because I recently sent a letter to Department of Commerce, and I'll tell you why. Gun sales have rocketed. Redmond has seen a 268% increase. Kirkland, 145% increase. Kent, 119. Seattle, 55. The background checks in every community across Western Washington have spiked. And that is why it's so important to make sure we still continue to have a strong agenda this legislative session. I will mention that given my work in domestic violence, a lot of the gun legislation that I've supported and sponsored over the years has a lot to do with domestic violence and making sure that those individuals who have a history of violence don't have access to firearms. And this year, well, we all know that when a firearm is present during a domestic violence scenario, the chances of someone being killed rises 500%. And we know in most cases, those tend to be women. With your help, we actually, in 2019, passed a bill that required law enforcement to temporarily remove firearms from when responding to domestic violence calls. And this issue is, again, so much more urgent this year because domestic violence has gone up dramatically during the pandemic. In King County, we've had more than 24 homicides this year directly related to domestic violence. One of the bills that I had last year was a bill dealing with the restoration of gun rights. There are a lot of loopholes in that process currently. And so you have individuals who have been convicted of felonies, serious felonies, who are able to get their gun rights back. That bill unfortunately did not make it last year, so we will be introducing it again this year. I'll be introducing it in the Senate, and Representative Wallen has graciously agreed to actually sponsor it in the House. I'm really hoping that it is going to be a House bill that comes over to the Senate. We, Representative Goodman and I have been working on a bill to modernize our protection order process. And this is, again, also key because we need to make sure that survivors of domestic violence have the opportunity to get those protection orders, especially during the pandemic. And we know that making sure those guns are removed from those abusers as early on in the process is very important. What I have really been focused on this interim is actually working with the Department of Commerce on the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention. I was very glad that funding for this office was not cut when the governor was signing this bill, because that was a decision he was making on a lot of the bills. So the funding remained intact. However, there was a hiring freeze. So there wasn't a lot of work. There was no work happening in the office. So I recently reached out to Lisa Brown, the director of the State Department of Commerce, and I had convened a group of experts from around the country to really figure out, what would be a good thing for this office to do to start, which could potentially be have low fiscal impact, because we know we have to really worry about the budget next year. And so the hope really is that this office is going to establish a process to collect and share data effectively at a state level, as well as provide grants for local and regional violence reduction initiatives. And given what we have been seeing with gun sales and gun violence, it is really crucial that this start happening right away. So one of the things that this office could really help us do is identify the statistically small group of individuals who are actually involved in gun violence. According to the National Network of Safe Communities, approximately 60 to 80% of a city's homicides are made up of a mere 0.05% of the city's population. And so we really need to make sure we're collecting data and doing research to identify those communities and groups of individuals where we can have effective programs to do intervention. A couple of those programs already exist in King County through the Shots Fired program, and that's what this office was based upon. And so it really is about making sure we establish good programming to be able to go into communities and address gun violence before it happens, because there are certain groups or individuals that may be most susceptible to gun violence. It's like actually smoking a cigarette. If you grow up in a household where your parents smoke cigarettes, you're more likely to smoke cigarettes. It's the same with gun violence. If you grow up in households where guns are present and you're exposed to gun violence, you're more likely to engage in that. And so that is why you have to make sure you take a public health approach in dealing with gun violence. So given the restrictions of our session, I'm really hoping a lot of the focus will be in establishing and running the office. I did want to mention, since this was in your legislative priorities, that Senator Cooter in the Senate has traditionally had a bill about high-capacity magazines and banning assault rifles. It is my understanding she is planning on introducing that bill again. The one thing I will also mention is that I have been very, very concerned about the manner in which people have been bringing their guns to rallies and marches. It really concerns me that people are using their Second Amendment rights to infringe on people's First Amendment rights. And I think the open carry and the manner in which it is being utilized in Washington is really being done in a manner to intimidate people. And that is clearly not okay. So thank you so much for your time here today. And with that, I am happy to turn this over to Roger Goodman and happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dinkra. Representative Goodman, you have to take yourself off mute. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Becky, and good morning, everyone. Becky, it's rare that I'm described as seasoned. I guess just in case you're curious, I like garlic and parsley.
I know, I didn't say what with.
Yeah, I don't really like rosemary very much. I hope there's no one named Rosemary here. Again, good morning, everyone. And I'm Roger Goodman, starting my 15th year now in the House of Representatives. Along with Senator Dingra, we represent the same district, literally the same territory, and we talk about 11 times a day because we are working on very similar issues, including domestic violence and gun violence and policing reform, sentencing reform. It's a great pleasure to work with Senator Dingra. Just to let you know, actually to let the grandmothers on Cape Cod know, I was born and brought up in Rhode Island. I was the son of a Brown University professor and spent my first 35 years summering on Cape Cod, the house on Hyannis Harbor. So I'm very familiar with that territory and a New Englander at heart. I worked on gun issues when I was doing my graduate degree at Harvard with the Boston Gun Project in the late 1990s, where we went into Dorchester and Chelsea and tracked down the trafficking of illegal firearms and gang leaders and their luring young people into gang life. And it was a very interesting project. And we really brought gun violence under control in Dorchester and Chelsea through very innovative means. Here in the state legislature, I've been very active on the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee on gun. This is a careful balance actually between gun rights and gun safety. As you probably know, the state constitution in Washington is a legacy of the Wild West, late 1800s, and individual gun rights are much more strongly guaranteed than under the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So gun safety reform in our state is a little bit more challenging than on the federal level. I've been focusing mostly on background checks. There are sort of three big categories of firearms reform. One is the weapons themselves, so magazine capacity, automatic weapons, and so forth, attempts to ban them. That's very politically difficult. So that's, I certainly would vote for those bills, but haven't spent a lot of political capital on them because none of them have ever passed. The second is where weapons can be, and that's schools and public places. And we finally got childcare centers and preschools roped off last year. It took too long. And the third is who should possess firearms, and that's where I've been active to make sure that those with mental illness, those with a history of violence, convicted of felonies, those under the age of 21, very impulsive young people, and domestic abusers in particular, have been working to get guns out of the wrong hands. And so I've been enacting background check legislation for quite a number of years. Last 2 years actually got bills passed. One was to make sure that the background checks were performed for those who possess concealed weapons permits. When you get a concealed weapons permit, you get a background check done, but then there's not another one done for 5 years. And so for each purchase, there needs to be a background check done. And the FBI, under our dear president, has sort of withdrawn from doing those background checks. So we stepped in. I enacted legislation to make sure that even those with concealed weapons permits have to have the background check done. So they can't leave the store with a gun anymore. They have to go home and wait for the full check to be done. Just this last year, we discovered that many people probably who should not be possessing firearms were purchasing parts of weapons. And then they were having parties putting guns together. And we're talking about like AR-15s and pretty powerful weapons. And so got legislation through to ensure that the purchase of gun parts was subject to background checks as well. We discovered that in the last year, there were 46,000 purchases in the state of Washington of these gun parts. So that was another loophole that we filled in the last year. This year, as you've already heard, it's going to be very logistically challenging. And so we have a focus, limited legislation, but it's really going to make a difference. And one of those areas is policing reform. I've been thrust right into the middle of this. I chair the Public Safety Committee and have for many years, with jurisdiction over our criminal system, including policing. And in the last couple of years, we've already made a lot of progress bringing the police and underrepresented communities together on the question of use of deadly force. We worked together to enact Initiative 940, which changed the threshold for what is the justifiable use of deadly force. And here's where the issue of gun violence and racial equity comes together, because as you probably know, policing adversely affects communities of color more than other communities in terms of who is stopped, who is searched, who is arrested, and against whom deadly force is used. Disproportionately, it is people of color and young men of color in particular. And so we are taking another look this year at this use of deadly force standard, and part of the broad policing reform agenda will include raising the threshold for the use of deadly force so that it's not what is reasonable, but what is necessary, which is a very different way of framing it, so that a use of force will be the very last option, a deadly force, and less than lethal means of force and de-escalation, and regarding the sanctity of life will be the priority. And so we will save lives, and we will reduce the needless injuries and deaths of people of color, particularly young men of color, this way. The policing groups are, it's actually quite collaborative this year. We're not encountering a lot of obstructionism and defensiveness. The community groups and the police groups we're all at the table and staying at the table. So this policing reform effort is really very promising. I actually just looked at a RAND report. This is on another topic, but just released that there are 3 measures which we, again, probably know that can significantly reduce deaths from gun violence. So the first is safe storage. We are still working on that in our state. And the second is the restrictions on who can carry concealed. And the third is limiting the use of firearms in self-defense, the so-called stand your ground, which we do not have in Washington state. So we still have progress to make on perhaps restricting who can carry concealed, but in particular safe storage, or liability for allowing guns to get into the wrong hands is actually a better way of doing it. To say to gun owners, we trust you, but if you leave a loaded weapon on the kitchen table and your kid gets a hold of it and there's harm that results, you will be liable. And most gun owners actually are responsible, and they would be willing to accept that, but we still have to enact that restriction. Trying to think of some of the other issues we will be considering this year. Again, capacity, magazine capacity limits. There was a adverse case in the Ninth Circuit in California just this last year, which might make it more difficult constitutionally, because again, our constitutional guarantee of firearms rights are stronger than under the Second Amendment, but we're still going to go for that anyway. With a limited legislative session, I think the gun issue is certainly very important. We've made a lot of progress, both through ballot initiatives and through the legislature. And I think perhaps the primary issue will be, again, the use of deadly force by law enforcement, reducing gun violence that way. I wanted to bring out another interesting topic related to firearms and race. This is not so much about reducing gun violence, but about needlessly incarcerating people of color when weapons are involved with their crimes. Senator Dinger and I both serve on a task force to reform our sentencing system top to bottom. We have been locking people up way too much, and we are trying to reform our criminal sentencing system so that we use our incarceration resources much more judiciously for those who truly are a threat to the community, but for others, more community-based and therapeutic approaches to crime. And unfortunately, what we've seen over the years, the legacy of the get tough times of the 1990s, when the possession of a firearm or the use of a firearm or merely a firearm being around during the commission of a felony results in what we call sentencing enhancements, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the offense and the type of weapon. And these enhancements have run consecutively to one another rather than concurrently. In other words, they stack on top of one another. The most notorious case was a youth who brandished a weapon and stole kids' candy during Halloween. And for each person each young person around which he brandished his weapon was a firearm enhancement. It resulted in a prison sentence of, I'm not sure, I mean, it was something like 80 years. And that actually went to the state Supreme Court and was remedied for youth. But we really do have to reduce the excessive sentences resulting from firearms in connection with crimes. This will not endanger the public, and yet the racial disproportionality in sentencing is most stark because of the stacking of these sentencing enhancements related to weapons. So again, this isn't necessarily about gun violence, but it is about racial equity, and it links to the gun issue. So the bill I will be introducing destacks or makes concurrent these weapon enhancements, and also makes eligible other options for people who are incarcerated so that they get back into the community more successfully.
Great. Thank you very much. And we have been joined now by Representative-elect David Hackney. And David, if you can take a few minutes and talk to us about your priorities and why you're so interested in this issue.
Sure, thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. I'm trying to balance a lot of different events today. You know, my real focus on gun violence actually comes from my past. You know, when I was in high school, my best friend was shot to death by another teenager who should have never had access to a firearm. And so I am a gun violence survivor. And I recognize that, you know, particularly young people obviously just don't have the judgment and understanding of the consequences. And so having limits on purchase and possession of weapons for youth is very important to me. As I went through school and my career, I ended up as a federal prosecutor. And just as Representative or Chairperson Goodman was talking about stacking, you know, we did in the federal system pursue enhancements based on possession and use of weapons, which I think is appropriate. But in the federal system, we did not allow stacking for anyone, because those obviously those numbers could run high, and it doesn't make any sense. And going forward in this community, I was able to volunteer for I-1639 and I-940, you know, responsible gun laws and police accountability with the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, and they were kind enough to offer me a spot on their board for the last 2 years, where I've attempted to help them, you know, organize and advocate, you know, both testifying in Olympia, you know, and working, you know, with the board to advance really, I think, a message, you know, of how, you know, how guns intersect with a lot of different groups, not only in disproportionate, not only minorities, but domestic violence, people with mental illnesses or history of violence against people and animals, which is the need for the emergency risk protection orders, which I have sponsored, not sponsored, but helped advocate for, and high capacity, regulation of high capacity magazines. All of these are priorities for me. I'm a freshman. I don't know what committee I'm going to be assigned to. I don't know, but I do know, regardless of my committee assignment, that I am going to be involved in responsible gun legislation. And so I look forward to my background as a gun violence survivor, a former federal prosecutor, and a board member. I am going to be stepping down from the Alliance to concentrate on my role as a state representative, but my you know, my heart will always be with them and focusing on their legislative agenda. I'm in South King County, the 11th district. South King County experienced 77% of all the gun violence in King County in 2019. this is a priority for my community. We are seeing the disproportionate impact of gun violence. I think police reform is also really important because I also live in a majority minority district. And so these are always going to be focuses of mine as I represent the needs of the people of my community. So I look forward to working with all of you. I don't have a specific set of legislation yet, but I'm going to hopefully, as we move further in the process, I'm going to get a better understanding of the lay of the land and where I'm most needed. I'm going to make it clear, I don't have to be the prime sponsor. I think what I can contribute is to be a forceful advocate in caucus, forceful advocate on to help make sure that we are advancing responsible gun laws to protect the people of my district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question, different question for each of you. And I'm going to take the prerogative to going into this backwards. So David, you get to be the first up. You said you don't have any specific ones, but are there particular pieces of legislation you're thinking about, like high capacity magazine or something else that you would be the prime sponsor of?
Yeah, I like the way the Representative Goodman kind of broke it down. I think we really have to focus on who we are allowing to possess and purchase firearms. I think that's really important. I think, high capacity magazines and regulation of them talks about, the kind of firearms and munitions that we're allowing people to possess and to purchase. And I also think, police accountability is one of the bigger issues of firearms and police accountability. But I am also focused on, in this pandemic, in times where people with mental illness and other issues, domestic violence, where people are together, that we really, really, really have to be focused on making sure that people that are unreasonably risky don't possess weapons. That would probably be my priority.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Representative Goodman. First of all, I think I actually have a couple of questions for you, and Senator Dinker, hang in there, you're next. But you said something that was really interesting to me, that we have a stronger protection in our Constitution. Have you ever thought about introducing a constitutional amendment that would reduce that and make it more like the federal Article 2 amendments? Anyhow. No.
I guess I can give you a one-word answer there. I have to say, in my, I can't believe 4 decades in politics now, I look in the mirror like, oh my God, what happened? The two issues that are nationwide in this country, single issues for many, many people, are firearms and reproductive rights. Yeah. And so when any bill related to firearms is introduced that might possibly restrict anyone from possessing a firearm in any place, we receive thousands of emails with all capital letters and vulgarity and exclamation points, although they've now been schooled and they start their emails with something like, "Thank you for your service." And then they launch into the exclamatory emails. This is for many people who are very fearful about the federal government coming to their door and taking their weapons away. This is an all or nothing issue. And so it has been a struggle for us in the legislature to enact reasonable, common sense gun legislation, which is one reason why we appreciate grandmothers and the Alliance and Everytown and so forth, because without your advocacy and your work in the community, we wouldn't have had the successful ballot initiatives, which really helped give us momentum in the legislature. And also, when you are testifying or we're holding hearings in person, we see all of the orange shirts and orange scarves and orange sweatshirts in the audience. And that's new just in the last few years. It used to be all weapons enthusiasts sitting in the audience. And so the tide has shifted. However, to amend the Constitution is hard enough anyway. You need a 2/3 vote of the legislature. We don't have the votes for that. And then you have to put it on the ballot after that. And even in our district, Senator Dinger and I represent the 45th district, which is a classic suburban district. There are a lot of weapons enthusiasts, and we receive emails from them too. I'll give you an example. Senator Dinger mentioned during these peaceful protests, we have had militia type folks with weapons and wearing fatigues and really harassing people. Here in Kirkland, where I am right now, there was a peaceful protest, and there were armed militia folks really menacing the public, and the Kirkland City Council has taken action on this, and we're trying to figure out how to strengthen what's called the unlawful carry statute. There is a statute that talks about menacing the public or intimidating people with weapons, which is going much further than what is allowed under the open carry regime. And even mentioning amending this to make it stronger so that we can actually hold accountable people who menace others and who intimidate others is arousing a pretty strong reaction from weapons enthusiasts. The other thing is, and this is true, I try to legislate more quietly in this area and to enact common sense gun legislation, because if you get into an argument with someone about gun rights, they have guns. I can get into an argument with someone about reproductive rights, but it doesn't end up violent in the end. And so a number of us have had death threats because of attempts to enact common sense gun legislation. So although we might want to bring the Constitution into the 21st century, and it's not the Wild West anymore, politically, I just don't think that would be feasible.
Okay. Senator Dinkra, I'm going to go to you now, and I know that you have been looking at appropriations issues, budget issues in this area. And could you tell the group which ones we need to watch out for, which ones we need to support, where we might be in danger of cuts, particularly with respect to the office that you birthed, if you will, last year?
Thank you for that. And actually, I may send all of you the letter that I sent to Lisa Brown about this. But the budget for the Office of Firearm Safety was not cut. It was just because of the freeze that no one was hired to run the office. So the hope really is that in the governor's budget, next budget, that funding is still secure and that they're not going to cut the funding for this office. And so in preparation for that, I'd actually convened a whole bunch of experts from around the country and statewide to talk about, what would this office, what should we really focus on given the fiscal issues that we're seeing as a state moving forward. And so the recommendations, there were 5 of them. The first one was to really create a plan for data collection regarding homicide and non-fatal shootings, and do coordination, a plan for coordination of all the work being done in the state on community violence, because we don't have one entity that is coordinating all of that. That was the first one. And the second one really was about identifying that statistically small group of people that I'd mentioned before that are involved in gun violence, especially in those areas that currently violence prevention work is not being done in. So Yakima, Pierce, Snohomish County were critical as places that we need to start. And then making sure that there is a focus on coordinating and conducting training statewide on understanding violence prevention work, because it is a very specific kind of work that is done, and people really need to understand gun violence, and not everyone has that. They have assumptions on what that means, but you really need to really understand how gun violence occurs in communities. And so then the next one would be to create a state and federal grant funding plan, and then directing those funds to those most impacted areas. So then you have a coordination system for all these grants that many people in our communities apply for. And then really making sure you are researching national best practices that currently exist in order to do this work, because we want to make sure that we are being effective and efficient in doing this work. And then really making sure that there is a plan for technical assistance and evaluation for this office. So some of the prevention work that we actually funded last year, and I was so glad to see that those RFPs did go out, were a couple of programs that have been in King County that really have been working really well. And this is community passageways. They have a very specific program called Deep Dive, and I actually did a town hall type meeting with the youth involved in them, in that program. They are mostly youth of color, and I'm saying youth because they're anywhere from 18 to 25. We have another program called Choose 180. And so the people who run these programs were actually able to apply for some of the grant money to have similar programs like this in other parts of the state. So it really is about ensuring that we are doing that intervention, doing that prevention work. And those are the, I think, the fiscal things we need to make sure that we're continuing to do, is making sure funding goes to this office and that funds are available to actually do prevention and intervention work as well as the data collection.
Great, thank you very much. We are out of time, and I am so sorry because there are many, many more questions from our members. We may follow up with some of you on some of them. I do want to say we want to thank you for your participation. We look forward to working with you during the session. One of the questions was, how are we going to know what bills are introduced? That's my role. And through your legislative chairs, you will be getting weekly, if not more frequent, reports about what bills are being introduced and when there are hearings and so forth, and how you access them remotely. This is a little bit of a practice on how to use Zoom today. So again, thank you to all of our panelists. We look forward to working with you. And I am going to pass it over to GAGV's co-chair, Judy McBroom, for some concluding words.
Good morning, everyone. I want to extend my thanks to our panelists and to Becky, who gave us a preview, a peek of what is coming up in the legislative session in January. I found it very exciting to listen to your comments. I know it's going to be challenging, and I wish you a lot of success. And I hope that when grandmothers can be helpful, you will call on us. I also want to thank Chelsea Wright and the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, who have provided the technical assistance and the software to bring this program to reality. And finally, it's been mentioned before, but a second thank you never hurts, goes to Maggie Carr for her, a member of our program committee, and it was her hard work and meticulous attention to detail that brought this program to you today. This seems like a good time, December, the end of one year coming up, the beginning of another, to both look backwards and forwards. And I want to very briefly mention two initiatives that are in both of those time periods. During 2020, for the first time ever, grandmothers endorsed elected officials up for re-election based on their voting records of 5 pieces of legislation in the previous session. So we had some data to rely on in coming up with those endorsements. We also recognized gun sense challengers based on their campaign literature and their personal statements. In all, we supported 93 candidates, and many of those were successfully elected. This work was accomplished due to the large and hardworking Ledge Committee, ably chaired by Patty Otley and Jennifer Dolan Waldman. The board also, through painstaking work, came up with our first statement on racial justice. This statement was discussed through 3 board meetings. Believe me when I say that every word in that statement was well considered. The statement provides us with a lens through which to view all of our work. And I hope that you saw that in work in the program presented to you today. Both our racial justice statement and the list of legislators that we recommended may be found on our website. Now we turn our gaze to 2021. We have 2 exciting initiatives which we will be launching. The first of these we are calling a grand conversation. This will be a conversation between a grandmother favoring gun sense legislation and a grandmother favoring gun rights. A moderator will skillfully guide the discussion to help the participants articulate their views and arrive at finding common ground. In this time of factional divisions, it's important for us to talk with each other. And that's exactly what this initiative is designed to do. And we hope that this grand conversation will be a much needed model for how to conduct a respectful change of ideas. The second initiative grows out of our current time in the pandemic, which has brought us not only tragedy and hardship and sadness, but as alluded to by others, it's opened up new opportunities. So in 2021, we plan to utilize Zoom to establish a national communication network among grandmothers. This will build on our current members in 31 different states and expand our reach in the state of Washington. We hope to serve as a conduit for grandmothers to share information and to marshal collective action, whether at the state or national level. And in this effort, we are looking forward to being joined by Cape Cod grandmothers who are here today with us in our program. So as you might see, these 2 initiatives are going to involve a lot of work. And in anticipation of this new and challenging work, I want to echo the words of Donna Stringer's plea for you to renew your membership. Because we are an advocacy organization, our strength is in our numbers. We need each of you to be with us as we head into the new year. This month also brings to a close my term as co-chair of Grandmothers. It's been exciting and rewarding work and really a joy to do. In many ways, I'm sorry that my role is ending, but I am happy to introduce to you or announce the names of our new leadership. Susan Simon will be our new co-chair and Cherie Proctor-Rowe, our new vice chair. And I am confident that they will provide strong leadership for grandmothers as we head into 2001. Thank you again for attending our webinar today. Wishing all of you very joyful holidays. Thank you.